Mary jumped in. Today, Washington, D.C. woke up under federal control. Its police department taken over by Trump administration. They've been federalized, and the National Guard troops ordered to patrol the streets. The official White House line is that it's a crime emergency. The numbers, however, tell a very different story. Violent crime is down 26% from last year, and last year marked a 30-year low. My guest today, of course, on the record, Reverend Al Sharpton, founder and president of National Action Network, has branded this move, you have said, Rev, as an attack on major Black cities. It's a distraction from the mounting pressure over the Epstein files and a dangerous step toward eroding First Amendment rights. In a powerful statement, you said, quote, the beginning of the end if we don't stand up, comparing Trump's words and actions to a glorified form of martial law designed to punish protesters and strip away the humanity of the homeless. Now we're going to dig into this issue because DC is not the only one on the list. It's the testing ground, but there are other cities that the president named that he's got up next. Rev, you've called this an attack. Break that down.
I think it is a clear attack when you have a president decides, without any dialogue with the mayor and the local officials, that he is going to, despite the fact that, as you correctly showed, the data says that crime has gone down, a 30-year low, without any discussion with them, he's just going to come in and take over and supersede the police in the Metro Washington, D.C. area. Now, several things come to mind when you hear that. One is that if D.C. had its statehood, he could not do that. And the fact that they do not have the right to vote for a federal senator or congressperson, yet they pay federal taxes, is at the root of the disempowerment here. Secondly, that you're talking about a man that sat for several hours in the White House and watched his supporters beat up law enforcement, and he never picked up the phone and called the National Guard or anybody else to stop and protect the lives of even his own vice president and members of Congress. And to add insult to injury, he pardoned them after he came back in the White House. So let me get this right. A man with 34 convicted felonies who pardoned felons that beat up law enforcement in Washington is going to come into Washington and save the day. That is on its face ridiculous.
Absolutely. And don't forget, we're even seeing some of these January Sixers, people could possibly potentially in some areas being hired to patrol some of these streets. And so people are
Absolutely.
concerned about being in masks. There are some things that concerned me during um, I was in the briefing room yesterday, and there were some things that concerned me. And the Attorney General, Janine Pirro, she was alluding to the fact of how she wanted to prosecute younger, basically, I'll say younger men, but younger people. She wanted to start at the age 14, 15, 16. She said, but we can't get to them. And so I felt like when I was listening, I'm like, you guys are hearing the next play, what they're gunning for. They want to prosecute at a much younger age, and go harder. So someone was asking me, what are we going to start seeing on the streets? And I thought about you, because this made me think of what we saw in New York with stop and frisk. I said, you're going to see more officers on the street. You're going to see more stop and frisks. You're going to see different agencies. But the president also said, invoking other parts of the military in this. The mayor was asked, are these National Guardsmen, are they going to be armed? There was no answer. The mayor said, we don't know. We are literally in uncharted waters, Rev.
No, I think that when I heard Janine Pirro, who's now the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., say that, she was absolutely talking about stop and frisk. And she was saying that I want to be able to bring federal charges against younger people. Her complaint was that y'all won't let me get the young ones. They have to be a certain age for it to be federal. So, and I would not be surprised if they don't pursue taking that into Congress and lowering the age where they become federally convicted, stopped and frisked, and their whole lives ruined as federal felons.
Or shipped
And
off
they
someplace, Rwanda.
Chip, obviously, they can drop you in Sudan now in the middle of a civil war and nobody in charge. So I think that this is not what could happen, it's happening in front of your face. Right now, they are stripping us of everything, and we are walking silently into the abyss.
The mayor during her press conference, because there was a lot of unanswered questions, because you said earlier little conversation with local government of how this is going to roll out. We do know 800 National Guards are going to be put out. Not sure quite exactly where. There were protests yesterday during the mayor's press conference. She said she was asked about testimony that she had during January 6th, where she was concerned. I'm sorry, during the George Floyd protests, and she was talking about her concern of what would happen if this administration took over MPD. And someone said, reflecting on those comments, she got personal and candid when asked if this takeover could be a disaster. She said, a disaster, it is a disaster if communities stop trusting the police. I keep going back to what we saw happen in New York. A disaster when people stop calling them for help. A disaster when people who aren't committing crimes are antagonized into reacting. And her biggest fear, that this federal intrusion will undo years of community trust and create exactly the instability that it claims to fix.
I think that the mayor is right. I think it begins to establish a climate of us against them, police against civilian. And it, in effect, will usher in a police state. And I think the president has all but said that's exactly what they want. And I think that we need to be very clear that Washington, the nation's capital, is the experiment. They will do this in other cities around the country. And he particularly targets cities with black mayors, particularly black female mayors. Karen Bass, where he did the deportation. Now you have the black mayor,
Brandon.
Muriel Bowser in Washington, D.C. And I think we need to stop dancing around it, call it what it is. It's racist, it's bigoted, and it is has no basis of the facts because the data shows that crime is down. There's also the added advantage for him of trying to take Epstein out of the news. So he's now all of a sudden going to take over Washington first 3, 4 days of the week. We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about him and Putin meeting and all this stuff about the Epstein files he hopes will be forgotten.
And the CBO report that came out today that talked about how much Americans are basically going to be robbed by this big, beautiful bill, but how the wealthy will be cashing in on this bill. The targets he mentioned, Chicago, Oakland, Baltimore, LA. And I keep telling people, yes, crime always needs to be confronted in every city. But before you get to DC, you got some Republican states that you need to go through before you when you start talking about the rate of crime. And if you really wanted to come and talk about crime, why don't you look at Baltimore as an example of how to also get crime down? Because when you start with the stop and frisk, um, militarizing communities, you lean towards authoritarianism, but you're not solving, as she said, what you are trying to fix. So it shows your intent. And I wish people would dig in more because there are cities that have blueprints. And you've worked with some of them, community leaders, in how to get crime down throughout cities.
Absolutely. I think that we fought against the stop and frisk laws in New York, and they were saying they had to do it because of crime. We got rid of the law, and the crime still went down. Community policing.
Yes.
The way to keep crime down is for there to be trust between the police and the civilians, and for us to understand that police live in our communities and know our, when you have people that are in the same city, know the climate of the city, the kind of schools and all, it creates a climate of cooperation rather than a climate of occupation.
And then having Pam Bondi over this. What also struck out when I began stuck to me is when I began to look at the order, the executive order that he put out yesterday. In it, more than two times, he said the reason why he's doing this emergency crime bill is because we want federal workers to be able to get to work safe. And we know this is coming on the backs of that Doge employee that was
Right.
carjacked and attacked. So this wasn't about, again, I just want people to, this wasn't about confronting crime in DC. This was about control. This was a power grab. This was also because somebody messed with one of his Doge people who've
That's
been
right.
robbing people. So I just, what do you want people to know as far as people are like, well, what is the pushback? What can we do? Because
Well, the
it's coming
pushback
near
is
this.
that we must continue to mobilize. I think the demonstrations yesterday must be supported. We're adding it to our march on Wall Street on August 28th. We must agitate to set the climate then for putting people in office that all reside right there in Washington at least part of the week that will outlaw this. We need to take back the Congress and outlaw this kind of behavior. Isn't it interesting that in the during the pandemic, when crime was on the rise because people were looting and doing whatever they wanted to do, Donald Trump was president then. He didn't call in the National Guard. People forget Donald Trump was president during the pandemic, told us to take bleach. He was president during George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. President then. So now all of a sudden, this new discovery of law and order. I mean, if you believe that, I have a bridge I can sell you next time you come to New York.
I'm sure he'll be selling bridges next, Rev. I don't want people to get distracted by this crime emergency framing because it's the emergency is really unchecked power.
Exactly.
That is the emergency that we are facing. Before we go, I do want you to, again, because I want to keep pushing it, talk about the Wall Street March that's coming up. I want people to know we talk about getting involved. People need to be attending meetings. If I ain't asking you to start an organization, but I'm asking you to join and understand what's happening and what you can do, because it's really the will and the voice of the people that have the power to shut these things down. Because
Absolutely. Well, the March on Wall Street is the anniversary day of the March on Washington. And as you know, every 5 years, we go to Washington and remember the Great March and how they fought segregation in that time. And we deal with the issues of our time. Well, 5 years ago, 2020, we brought 200,000 people in the middle of a pandemic to Washington around George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. We said this year, the change is let's go to Wall Street. Why go to Wall Street? Because that's the ones that are benefiting from the cut in Medicaid, the cut in SNAP. They got a tax break and it's being offset in terms of money by cutting programs in our community. They are the ones that benefit from DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion being knocked out of the corporate world. They cooperated with killing it. So we need to go where the dream of Dr. King said August 28, 63 is being deferred. August 28, 1955, Emmett Till was killed. August 28, 63 is the March on Washington. August 28, 2025, we need to stand up right where the capital of industry and finance is and say, we are not going back, and we know you are the beneficiaries and the finances of what's going on. They have not been confronted. We're going to do it August 28th. We have buses coming from all over the country. People can go to www.nationalactionnetwork.net and register and say, I'm interested, I want to come. Where's the bus? Give me more information. Go to www.nationalactionnetwork.net or call the toll-free number 1-877-626-4651.
I thank you for that. Before we go, I wanted to get in one last question. Rev, have you been talking with any city leaders from all over? I know you have always in and out of meetings, but are they looking to see how to prepare for this? This was in Project 2025, so I'm sure many already
It's
are.
in Project 2025. I'm talking to a lot of city leaders, and including in Washington, and we are definitely going to have a counter strategy to this. We're not going to let this go back on our watch.
Love it. Thank you so much, Rev Sharpton, for joining me on the record. Look forward to talking with you again, sir.
Always. Thank you.
All right.